Hey folks, it's Simon here. Welcome back to the channel and to Final Fantasy 16. And today I wanted to give you a bit of a guide on the Garuda boss fight. And the reason for this is it's actually quite a challenging fight. It is indeed the first boss in the game that led to me having a game over screen. So I thought, hey, if I failed at this, others will too. So a few tips may just go a long way. Now, one thing I do want to say from the get-go is that I'm only going to be showcasing the first part of the fight today. Okay, there is a second phase that occurs once you defeat this first boss, and that's because the second phase contains huge story spoilers, which I don't want to ruin for you guys this early on. So I want you to experience that for yourself. It is absolutely fantastic. But the first part of the fight that we are actually going through here is the part that is difficult. The second phase is more of a formality anyway. So this fight is made all the more difficult by the fact that you are in a very enclosed space here. Okay, a lot of the ground has given way and Clive is having to fight a substantially sized icon here on a very small bit of land. And also, heading into the encounter with only a single potion and high potion was not the greatest idea. I really do like this boss design though. The way that Garuda is often crouched down in order to reach Clive, who is just so much smaller than she is just an incredible design in my opinion, and it works really well. So the weak spot here on this boss fight is the head. That's what you want to be aiming for. And of course, you will need to be dodging all of the attacks. Now, one thing you can do, I have found out to be quite helpful here, is when Garuda lifts up her head in order to perform some kind of talon attack, if you dash to her head when it is in the air, then not only can you continue to damage the boss, but you can also dodge those talons at the same time. So get to kill two birds with one stone, so to speak. Now, as with many boss fights in Final Fantasy 16, they do sort of lure you into a false sense of security, as they start off relatively easy, but they do ramp up as the fight progresses. So just bear that in mind. If you are going to fail at this fight, it is likely to be once you've already been in it for 5-10 minutes or so. Kind of frustrating, but again, that's just how these bosses work. They do like to amp up the pressure and the stakes. So after a minute or so of attacking, you will be able to stagger the boss for the first time. And of course, you want to just be able to lay on as much damage as possible during this stagger. If you can take off 20 to 25% of Garuda's HP during this time, then that will just mean that you have a little bit less work to do then going forward. So I do recommend saving all of your icon special abilities, or at least making sure that you have them ready for when this happens. And yep, you should have 4 icon abilities by this point, including the Garuda abilities and the Phoenix abilities. If you've been able to save up for the Rebirth Flame ability, I think it's called, from Phoenix, then that will be a huge bonus here, because it does a lot of damage and it will also give you a little bit of free healing as well. It does have a long cooldown, but using that on staggers, I find, is a real help. Now, once you've got through the first stagger, the fight kicks things off into the next gear, and Garuda is going to have a host of abilities that just flood the small battlefield and can be quite challenging to dodge. So just be prepared to pay attention to everything that's going on around you. You will have various tornadoes hitting the ground. You do get warning as to where they are going to land, but sometimes they are spammed all over the place and so can be difficult to dodge. As you can see, I was having a little bit of trouble here. But once you start to get used to that mechanic, it is not as scary as it first seems. But on top of that, then Garuda is also going to be using other wind abilities, including that thing that fires a blue projectile at you. So pay attention to those. And again, a lot of these abilities can be used at the same time. So you are going to be having multiple things to have to watch here. So the trick, of course, is we want to try and stagger Garuda for the second time as soon as possible. And that's because after the second stagger, the fight is pretty much over. However, just bear in mind that it is going to be a bit of a journey to do that. I do recommend not saving your icon abilities for this next part of the fight, because you just want to try and get it to that stagger as quickly as possible, as you are going to be dealing with all of that different forms of damage. As you can see, I am really struggling here. And although we've got down to the last third or so of the fight with no potions left, it is just not something I could overcome. And yeah, I do inevitably succumb to that game over screen for the first time ever in my Final Fantasy 16 career so far. As somebody who doesn't normally play these kinds of action RPGs, I suppose it was inevitable. But if you folks have also experienced a game over in FF16, I'd be interested to hear what fight it was that caused that first game over for you as well. And there it is for me. Fortunately, and I'm really thankful to the developers for this, because the boss fights in FF16 are quite lengthy, when you restart after a game over, you don't have to begin the encounter again from the beginning. I think it's from each time you stagger a boss, then that will create some kind of checkpoint, and that is where you then reload from if you do end up dying. So yeah, very happy for that. This is when I first discovered that little feature, which means that we're not put back too far in the encounter. However, you do also respawn with all of your potion charges stocked up, as you can see. So hopefully, you know, we should be okay to take care of this fight and finally finish it for good. And spoiler alert, yeah, I don't die again. However, we mustn't take things for granted. We are at the point of the fight now where everything is just happening all the time. So we have these tornadoes, these blue wave things that keep heading towards us, the Talon attacks. There is just always something to dodge. But of course, we still need to be getting that damage in. So if you can spend more time in the air, then in my experience on this fight, it does mean taking generally less damage. So make sure you are making good use of the Phoenix Dash ability. And as you start to get to the halfway point of the wheel gauge, of breaking that gauge, then just as always, be prepared to switch over to the Garuda abilities, because that will allow you to perform a deadly takedown by tapping circle once that wheel gauge is broken at the halfway point. That is something you are going to want to get into the habit of doing on these boss fights, as it does give you a few extra seconds to get some free damage in before the attacks recommence from the boss. So there's the deadly takedown. And yeah, I don't really hold back here on using the icon abilities. I just want to lay out as much damage as we can, because again, the second stagger really signifies the end of the encounter. So the sooner we can get there, then the sooner we can end the fight. But just be a little bit more cautious, because as soon as Garuda does recover from that final deadly takedown, she goes absolutely ham here and just starts unleashing everything. And this really is now just a battle of stamina, just laying on as much damage in the shortest amount of time as possible in order to finally, you know, kick off that second stagger, which we are nearly there. And then just laying on as much damage as we can with our standard attacks and any icon abilities that we have managed to recover. Now, to be honest with you, I'm not sure exactly if you even need to do much damage during this stagger. I think it does automatically trigger the cinematic clash once it has been completed. But yeah, just to be on the safe side, I spammed my attacks as much as possible. And that pretty much brought us to the end of the fight. Just make sure you pay attention to the button prompts now for the cinematic clash, and that will end phase 1 of the encounter. Again, phase 2, I'm not going to spoil for you. It is something to behold. It really is. So I hope you folks have a good time with that. It's not a difficult encounter in terms of the tactics, so I'm sure you'll be fine. But yeah, just enjoy the experience that is Final Fantasy 16. I am loving this game. I did not expect to be enjoying this as much as I am, but I am absolutely having a ball here. So thank you so much for watching. Have a great time with FF16, and I'll see you in the next video.